tonight. Thanks for joining us. Now, unfortunately, one of our admins, Bron, is not well tonight, so I'm juggling letting people in and introducing as well. So hopefully we can get everybody in that wants to join us. So welcome to the Learning Circle that's put on tonight about sustainability and the EYLF. It's the first learning circle from the Sustainability Alliance, which is made up of the sister organisations around Australia. And we do have New Zealand as part of our alliance, but they're not represented in this learning circle that we're having tonight. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on this evening in Melbourne. And I encourage you to pop in the chat where you're joining us from. Wherever you are in Australia, it's very exciting that we've got a national presence joining us tonight. So the chat function is down on your right. You can pop in there where you're joining from, and the other functions of Google Meet, some of you might be familiar with who were using this in COVID. I know in Melbourne early childhood centres we were using Google Meet a bit during our online learning during COVID lockdowns and things. So the camera and the microphone are down the bottom as well. Excellent. I can see people noting where they're from, and welcome from all over Australia. So we're really lucky to have Sue Elliott in our group tonight. Sue, were you going to say something then?
Hi everybody, welcome to our first Learning Circle.
And we've got some other of our leaders from our alliance organisations across Australia, which we've got a slide a little bit later on. So if you're not sure who your local representative is, we can certainly point you in the right direction as well. So tonight we are a really big group. This opportunity was taken up it was booked out 100 people within 48 hours, and we have got a date for a second alliance, which we'll share at the end of tonight as well. And the Learning Circle is sort of more about, it's not a formal presentation. We do have a couple of slides, but it's more about creating a space where educators can get together, how we can share ideas, how we can pose questions, and how the Alliance can gather information where educators are at and what educators are looking for in relation to the implementation of the new sustainability principle as well. So as I said, we acknowledge and welcome the Aboriginal and traditional owners of the land that we meet on today and for all over the country. And to any First Nations people that are joining us tonight as well. And I can see from the chat, there's lots and lots of different areas that are represented, which is fantastic. So we've also got Fran here tonight. Are you there, Fran? Fran's also going to join us. And Fran represents New South Wales for us tonight. Fran, do you want to introduce us a little bit into the sustainability principle in the early years learning framework?
Sure. Thanks, Steph. But first, what I'd like to do is just to say that tonight is really about gathering information. It's about what you know. It's about what you'd like to know and how you'd like to share and to learn together in our learning circles or our webinars, and how you'd like to have a good conversation, because we know that early childhood people really like to talk, and this will give everybody a good opportunity to have a chat. So have a think about how you'd like these sessions to go, whether you'd like to have webinars where you have a presentation and then have some questions and answers after, or we have a chat. But we've got 50 odd people here tonight, and that's sort of a little bit difficult maybe to have a chat, but we'd really like to gather your ideas about what you want. So we're developing a webinar series, and each of the alliances in the different states and New Zealand will come together and talk about things that pertain specifically to them. But we'll use the information that we get tonight to gather to just sort of see where we're going. So we're going to start with the dimensions tonight around the sustainability principle that we're very, very excited about. And after a lot of work from the Alliance, which was a loose alliance, I guess, before we started this, but it still was an alliance. So we wrote a lot of applications to the updated EYLF, and we did get a sustainability principle in it. And I think Sue will talk about, perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, but you might talk a little bit about what perhaps isn't in the new principle.
Yeah, I could touch on that as well.
You could touch on that a little bit, that's there. So let's have a look, firstly, around the sustainability principle, that it is multidimensional, and it does refer to environmental, social, economic and cultural. It does leave out the political one, which Sue will touch on. So you've all had a good look at it, I would imagine, by now. So let's have a look at the environmental part of it first. So environmental sustainability is caring for our natural world and protecting, preserving and improving the environment. So that is one way of thinking about environmental sustainability. Social sustainability, in inclusion and living peacefully, fairly and respectfully together in resilient local and global communities. Economic sustainability is practices that support economic development without negatively impacting the other dimensions. And this includes a focus on fair and equitable access to resources, conserving resources, and reducing consumption and waste. So these are the things that comes directly out of the newly updated EYLF. What do you think about those? How do you think that perhaps the people who wrote the updated version of the EYLF put those together? Are there any thoughts that you have around these dimensions of sustainability? Do you think they're adequately or beautifully represented there? Are they understandable for yourself and your educators? So perhaps if we start, is that okay, Steph? If we just start having a little think around.
Absolutely. And people are welcome to put up their hand. The little hand on the bottom of the screen is to raise your hand. People are welcome to do that. Also are welcome to write something in the chat or pop their microphone on as well.
So what are your thoughts about what is there? Okay, so Maiki, I hope I pronounced that correctly, said, I'd love to get some practical examples to illustrate what these actually are. So does anybody have any practical examples that you could share with everybody else around what these might mean?
Amy says that their Bush Kinder program has helped promote the respect for the land. That's a great one. That's what we find as well, Amy. We run a Bush Kinder program. I'm the coordinator at Yarralea Children's Centre in Melbourne and one of the Bush Kinder teachers, and we certainly find that as well. And Amy's also said in how to care for the environment. That's a good example.
So do you think caring is a good word? What do you think about caring for the environment? Do you think there's anything more than caring for the environment? Just trying to provoke you. Little provoke. Okay, Paula. Paula's got your hand up. Would you like to say something, Paula?
Yes, sorry, I just have to work out how to get the microphone off.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've just this year I've concentrated on a sustainability project, which is really big, and it's been filtered all year. But the thing I started with obviously caring for nature and all that, but I actually peeled it back another layer and start to actually appreciate nature, because before you actually, I feel anyway, before you actually, want to care for something, you need to obviously be in it, be one with it, and you also need to, have that appreciation. So I don't know if that's a start, like, for help for others, but just that appreciation is really good.
Thanks, Paula. And there's lots of things coming into the chat. I'm just going to open it up a little bit here. And Sally has said caring suggests a human-centric approach. And I totally agree with that. Neil Noddings writes about caring for the environment. Well, if you're looking for a paper or some literature to talk about that, I can see Sue's wanting to say something there. I can see her looking, yes, I want to say something.
Just caring for me personally is not strong enough. The situation that the planet's in, we need to talk about restoring and regenerating. So if we can bring in those words in our work with children, that we're restoring and regenerating the planet, given the damage that's been caused through human actions that have created the climate change situation that we're in.
Thanks, Sue. There's some more, lots of things here. Mary has talked about, oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that another Sue noted that they like that love that it's more holistic than it was previously, which is, yes, a good point, that it is more holistic.
Okay, and Jennifer said one of the services, I mean, clearly you can all read this as well as I can, have incorporated language where the children promise to be kind global citizens to look after country. And I think importantly, the word country has been introduced into the EYLF. In one part, it says that educators need to take children onto country to learn about country, and that word country is actually there. So I think that's a good thing that's come from it too.
Jess has got her hand up. Can you unmute, Jess?
Okay, perhaps while Jess is having a fiddle with her microphone, you keep fiddling, Jess, and keep those thoughts. Around economic sustainability, has anybody got anything that you'd like to comment around economic sustainability and how that might be, how those practices might be incorporated into your everyday work? Okay, Sue Garrett. Sue Garrett has her hand up. We'll go to Sue first, then we'll come back to Jess.
Hi, Fran.
Hi, Sue.
I think definitely with the children, I would say our practices are holistically very sustainable, and I think I really like that this economic sustainability is in this in the principle itself. For me as a director, you know, it's really important that we're a sustainable entity, that we can keep ourselves sustainable as an organisation, but also in terms of the resources that we bring into our service and the resources we use at our service, that we are very sustainable around that. So getting rid of single-use plastics, thinking of things we can make ourselves and we can fix ourselves, and also thinking about where we get our resources from, especially in these big resource companies. And I know we've had these conversations around the nature play before, around looking at organisations like MTA and what they are selling and where they are getting their resources from, because I think in early childhood we waste too much, we get too many things, shells from who knows where, all those kinds of things. So I'm really glad that that aspect is in this this principle now.
Agree, and well said. Thank you. Thanks, Sue. Jess, we're there.
Can you hear me now?
Sort of.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Wanya from Brisbane. I'm sorry, I might have missed some of that, so I hope I don't go over what anyone said. I actually teach an environmental education centre in Brisbane, so I do playgroup at kindy through to year 12, so I'm a little bit different to you guys, but still in that space. but work a lot in this space. So a few things I wanted to mention from earlier, and I've got to go back to where I was thinking. I think, like Sue was saying, that sustainability thing is kind of not enough anymore. We need to be doing better than what we're currently sustaining is not going to be good enough for us. But that human-centric thing, I think we really important to teach the children that we are all part of this planet, and we aren't above the animals or the plants. We're all part of it, which is really important. And so to bring into the sustainability stuff, which I think was briefly mentioned, Indigenous ways of working and learning is such a massive, strong thread that we can be putting into this as well, which is a beautiful connection. All the Indigenous people across the whole world have forever learnt how to tread lightly on our planet. So that's a really great area to focus on too. I probably have lots to say, but after my mic mess up, I'm going to leave that there and let someone else say something.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Jess. And good points to bring up around First Nations people's understandings and knowledges and what is actually shared by them to non-Indigenous or non-First Nations peoples. And hopefully that can be at a deep level rather than a tokenistic level. I think that's perhaps something that we could have a discussion around, and how those sorts of things are implemented. I think that's something. Mintes has raised their hand. If you would like to put your mic on now.
Hi, Fran. It's actually Marnie here. I'm using.
Oh, it's Marnie. Oh, it's me. Hello, Mintes.
Hi.
Hello, Marnie.
So I had my hand up before, just when you just opened it rather than the economic focus. So just to touch base, follow on, I guess. For me, being in the preschool, being director for a while, we've been focusing on sustainability. But over the years, it morphed into different things. And I think something that we've been focusing on maybe last year. So I was very excited to see these different views of sustainability, because we've been doing the social aspect and looking at sustainable people. I think early childhood itself and the chaos that's going on with that kind of got us thinking about mental health. Also COVID and the impact that it's had on the little people that are coming through. And I think our stance is that you can't care and work towards improving and doing all the things that we've been wanting to do and have been doing when our own well-being is not strong, because we noticed taking the children out the gate this year, they couldn't even look up into trees because their well-being was so poor, just struggling, getting one foot in the other and moving in a space was really tricky. So just doing a lot of those things around interoception and just working out feelings and emotions and all of that sort of stuff, so that we actually have strong well-being in our little community before we can sort of get into those other spaces.
Okay, thanks, Marnie. I'm sorry I termed you Minter. I didn't know who you were. No, thank you for that point. Now, if you had to, and I don't know whether it's a good thing to do or not, if you had to put it into some kind of one of these environmental, social, economic, where is that kind of thing going to fit so that you can talk about? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? I know that it's very important and it needs to be sustained. So the word sustainability has a lot of different interpretations. Anyone got any thoughts around that? No? I mean, where it might fit, Sue?
Fran, I just wanted to suggest something that I've used in workshops that seems to work quite effectively, is to have those dimensions, use the UNESCO diagram of 4 dimensions, or you can make it 5 dimensions if you want to. And then as a team, write down some of the experiences, the routines or the pedagogical practices that fit with each of those dimensions of sustainability. And they don't necessarily neatly fit. Sometimes they go across multiple dimensions, but it's one way of having a team discussion and raising the importance of that multidimensional interpretation. And, you know, I don't mind if you have 3, 4, 5 dimensions. If you Google the dimensions of sustainability, you'll find that there are many different interpretations. But just documenting your experiences, your routines, your pedagogies, practices against those different dimensions might be a good way to map out what's actually happening in your service around sustainability. Thanks, Fran.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, Steph, should we move the slide on, do you think?
Sure, there's a few provocations on this slide. I mean, I think environmental sustainability is something that we've all been very familiar with, you know, over the years, and the one that people are most comfortable with. So, you know, thinking about how do you do that with children, and how do you have conversations with children about sustainability, and do you include families in those conversations as well? And there's just a couple of examples there. So if anyone's got other examples that fit into that sort of dimension, and as Sue was just saying, they are all absolutely intertwined. So this one on this slide has been separated, but they are all absolutely intertwined. And someone's just noted in the chat that about realising recently that acrylic paint is plastic. Yeah, there's a lot of learning to go with creative arts and materials. We're, you know, having similar journeys at our service with trying to find out, you know, where does it come from, what is it made from, and where does it end up? And is powder paint better, or is buying something in a plastic bottle better? And, you know, as Sue said, having those conversations with your team is really worthwhile and really important.
Does anybody have any questions around environmental sustainability? It's something that you've all been working with for a long time now. Any ideas, anything that you'd like to question, anything you'd like to know? Any comments to make? Perhaps not. Perhaps we move to the next dimension.
I think environmental is an area that everybody feels very comfortable with. It's the other dimensions that we find more problematic typically. Yeah.
Perhaps have a look at this. Have a look at this slide. And have a think about social sustainability and how children and families are involved, because I know in a number of the services that I'm very familiar with, and there's lots of familiar faces here tonight, thinking about social sustainability and how children can be involved and how they can be advocates and activists for social sustainability and change.
And as Libby said, children are such activists in taking home information and their knowledge, whether it's, you know, caring for country or for elements of sustainability that they have embedded in their children's service. They're taking them home, and then it's changing, you know, patterns of behaviour at home as well, which is a really powerful thing.
Can I just share one example, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah, sure, Sue, go for it.
I've been working on a new edition of Young Children and the Environment, particularly with Yvonne Paulick, who's based in Brisbane, and she did her master's research study as a practitioner, looking at the social dimension of sustainability around homelessness, and did a quite significant project with children around homelessness. She used a range of storybooks that discussed homelessness, what it meant. One of the aspects of the project that was quite interesting was that the children developed a museum of poverty, to understand what it meant not to have food in the fridge and not to have a roof over your head. Now, some people might find that that's too difficult, perhaps. You might feel a bit uncomfortable, but the case study that she shared about the work they did with the children and with the families, very supportive of the work they were doing. So it was a very deep understanding of social sustainability that came about through that project with the children. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
Can I just say something on that too, with these children being agents of change? What Sue was just saying is an incredible thing, and I think that act local, think global thing it could be really relevant to some centres. If you could potentially find a local situation like that children could get behind, but if that's too much and too big, finding something small and manageable, so give those children that sense of agency and that I can achieve something, and then maybe talking about that ripple effect out could be helpful for some people.
Thanks, Jess. Emily has her hand up. And then we can come back to the chat in just a minute.
Hi, everyone. So today we had some visitors from the local Aboriginal Centre come along to the childcare centre, and I just thought that it's really good to see the children see that there are different ways of not necessarily living but connecting to the world, and I just thought that was really good, and yeah, I just thought I'd mention that that could be a part of sustainability, to get to know different cultures. And there was no necessarily like intentional teaching about their culture, but they just sat next to the children, and it was really special to see that. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Emily. And just following on from what Emily's saying around social sustainability, I would like to pose a thought that, are we thinking purely in Western ways around what sustainability might be? I think that's something to think about and to reflect upon, and maybe that's something that we could talk about in ongoing learning circles about where our individual lenses are coming from, and how sustainability is interpreted through our individual lens. And how we take on other people's lenses around sustainability. That might be something that's interesting. Leanne, you have your hand up too, and I really want to come back to the chat. So let's sort of try and do that. So Leanne.
Sorry, just on the social sustainability and inclusion part. I had my children the other day interact with the Indigenous literacy program that was live streamed from the Sydney Opera House. That was a way that I was being inclusive in my service. But what it showed us was that the children from the outback regions are people going out there trying to be more inclusive and more respectful in the sustainability way, and actually delivering books to them out there in those communities. And what else they've done is they've actually gotten on board with Justine Clark from Play School, who has, in conjunction with the children from the outback, the Indigenous children, they've actually written their own books and written songs to go with them. So what I spoke to my children about was possibly around that inclusion and being fair and respectful of Indigenous people, was to possibly donate some books, keep that sort of you know, keep that fairness and that inclusion sort of side of things going. So that was a really a nice thing to watch. It was a beautiful thing to watch, to see that they were being included, even though that they lived out in these remote parts of Australia. So yeah, that was just something that I thought was great.
Yeah, thank you, and a really good example. Thank you. Going back to the chat here, and I'm just cognizant of time because we need to look at another area of sustainability. But one of the things in the chat that said, I think environmental sustainability is difficult when we have a dwindling environment, and I think that's a very, very pertinent statement to make. So it's not just about growing gardens and worm farms and things like that. It's actually looking at that very much larger picture of the dwindling environment and growing populations and town planning and advocating for green spaces. So I think that's something, again, that could be another topic of conversation for us ongoing. Looking at a rather bigger picture, a more community place.
Yeah. Fran, could I share one more example from a case study?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just related to that, I'd like to acknowledge Linda Price at Kinglake Ranges Children's Centre in Victoria. Their case study in the Young Children and Environment book was around their concern for the possums in their local forest up in the Kinglake Ranges, and was an area that was being logged. It was old growth forest that was being logged. So there were two aspects to the project with the children. One was during drought, where they led a community campaign to put water out for the possums, to make sure that the possums were healthy and happy during drought. But then also when the forest was being logged, it led to a campaign by the children and the centre and a parliamentary submission about stopping old growth forest logging in the Kinglake Ranges. And some of you may know that there's a ripple effect going around Australia at the moment to stop old growth logging. And in fact, they have stopped it in Victoria. So to me, that's very much that example crosses all the dimensions that we're talking about today, about protecting the possums, environmental sustainability, social sustainability in terms of the centre mobilising with children and families and the local community. It's also political sustainability in terms of the advocacy work that the children were doing. So thanks for that opportunity to share that example. I'm so inspired by the studies that I've been working on. Thanks.
Thanks, Sue. And just looking in the chat, Marnie's put in something, and she said, and hope when there is so much crisis in the environment. And I think, again, that's another very good way of looking at things. Recently, Sue and I were in Sweden and in Portugal, and we were attending some early childhood sustainability conferences. Well, one conference, which Sue will talk about, I'm sure. But somebody from one of the participants from Norway made a very, very strong argument for hope around sustainability. So again, that's something. Would you agree, Sue, that was something that came out very strongly, that being positive and hopeful is also helpful. So perhaps, Steph, if we could go to the next slide. And we've got another two to have a look at. So this is around economic sustainability. Having a think, we've had a little bit of a discussion around that, because I'd just like to come back to get some ideas of what you want. So perhaps, Steph, if we could have the next two slides, I think, up there. There's a political and a cultural aspect there. So thank you very much for those. So as Sue was saying, perhaps there are more dimensions than what is actually in the EYLF document, around cultural, political, social, economic environment and overall sustainability. So just in the next few minutes, because we've got Dr. Sue Elliott, who's going to talk about all sorts of things sustainable in a minute, but should we just get some ideas from you all around what you'd like, how you'd like our learning circles and our webinars to happen, what you'd like to talk about? What are some of the priorities that you think would be important? Is that a good thing to do now, Steph?
Yes, absolutely. I see that Linda had made a comment in the chat about their service focuses on a UN sustainability goal each year, and that's actually one of the or a couple of the webinars that we're developing around the Sustainable Development Goals. So, and they've been focusing on peace, which sounds like a really great focus for a centre as well. But yeah, I'm also really interested to know what sort of where people are at, what they're sort of thinking, and how we can support that in the webinar series that we're developing as well.
So over to you. What would you like? What do you need? What would you like? What do you want? Sue Garrett.
I'll say something. I hope I'm still being hopeful by saying this, but that I think we also have to acknowledge that our sector is in crisis, and workforce is an issue in our sector, and the turnover of staff is high, right? So in services, to do this sort of work, you need to get momentum, and you need to have champions in each service that, you know, are able to move this forward. And I do get scared that it's too hard for some people because they're just trying to get through the day. So I think if there's ways that we can share with the sector how being environment, like all the sustainability, holistically sustainability, how we can do that. I don't want to make it easy, but how do we just think of the people who are not in this room, who are not so interested? What are the little tips that we can give to these sort of people and these services and leaders to make change happen?
Yep, good. Thank you. Thanks, Sue. And before we go to Sandra, Linda said, Meg said, I'd like to unpack the principle. Unpack the principle as it's written in the EYLF and provide examples of actually what that is, which I guess is a bit of what we've been talking about tonight. So that's a good idea. And also how we can connect each other around the country and share practice that can demonstrate a national approach. Project approach, maybe I'm thinking here, because working together is important. And Lisa said some examples of practice which reflect the dimensions being explored. Provocations with our team. Yeah. Sounds good. Sandra, your hand is up.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I agree with Sue. I'm an educational leader for the two centres for the same organisation, and we are really not doing any sustainable practices, and it's something that I talk to them consistently about, and I get the nod. Yep, we know. Yep, we know we need to do this. I've set up, you know, champions. I've given them countless amounts of resources to get them started. So many suggestions, and it's a bit like you can take a horse to water, but you can't make that horse drink if it doesn't want to. And I think, you know, we are dealing with, and again, Sue, you're right, we are dealing with crisis in with staffing in our sector. We also are in a multicultural service and with a lot of English as second language educators. that makes it difficult as well. So I guess the approach is that for a service where nothing is happening, you know, getting some tips on really simple processes that people have, you know, that are in this journey, and I'm hearing some fabulous things tonight, that, you know, their journey, where did they start, what actually inspired their educators, and what has inspired their educators to be to continue that journey, because you don't know what you don't know, but educators have to enjoy the journey. They have to feel like, you know, they're getting something out of it. So, you know, I've got a lot of issues at the moment as educational leader, and you just feel tired. You really, really feel tired. And sustainability for me is a passion. And it's really deflating when it's a passion for you and you put so much effort into providing resources, examples, and you go back week after week and it hasn't been done. And when you ask what's the barrier, we haven't had time.
Yeah, so thank you. So there are a lot of the same or very similar ideas coming out of that, which Steph, Sue, and the others in the Alliance, we can have a talk about and work out how we're going to do that, and thinking about smaller groups, perhaps a smaller group where people can have conversations, perhaps in breakout rooms and things like that. So yes, and Sue's just saying, have a look at the ECA provocations for our Earth that we wrote. The number of us that are here tonight were instrumental in writing some of those cards. They're really useful for you. And I think, Steph, we need to move to Sue now.
Okay, thanks very much, Fran.
Would you like me to introduce you?
I think I can do that.
Okay,
Hi,
fine.
everybody. I'm Sue Elliott. I'm based in Armidale in northern New South Wales, originally from Victoria. Just a couple of comments on the discussion around the sustainability principle. We've talked about the dimensions, but one thing that I noticed when I did a word search for sustainability in the EYLF document, you'll find that most mentions of sustainability link to learning outcome 2, about children are engaged with their world. And it's really important to understand that sustainability goes across all 5 learning outcomes, particularly wellbeing. I think it's also part of identity, it's part of communication. So it goes across all 5 learning outcomes, not just learning outcome 2, where the word sustainability has been significantly placed. That's an obvious one, but it does need to be broader than that. I guess my role tonight is really to talk more about some of the international events that have been happening recently, and also share some resources briefly. And many of you may not be aware that Australia has actually been a leader in early childhood education for sustainability over at least a decade, if not longer. And there are only a handful of countries in the world that actually have a sustainability principle within their early childhood curriculum documents. So we're breaking new ground here, and that's part of the reason for having this learning circle, is to work out how best to proceed to work with educators, because often there is what's described as a policy practice gap, in that it's a great idea to have a sustainability principle within a curriculum policy, but then how is that translated into practice? And I think that's what you're saying, in what you need is examples of how that translates into practice and the daily pedagogies that you engage with children, and how you connect with families and community around sustainability. So, and I think one of the strengths that's quite unique in Australia to support this work is the fact that we do have state-based networks, and The first one was established, EEC, in 1992. So that's just over 30 years ago. And those networks are so unique. I haven't found them anywhere else internationally. And they provide a really strong advocacy group and grassroots practice ideas that can support everybody in working towards this new principle in the EYLF. So the two things that have been happening internationally just recently, a number of us, there are actually 5 Australians, including Fran, that we were able to travel overseas to go to the Transnational Dialogues, which was a research meeting of about 27 people engaged in research around early childhood education for sustainability. And there were people from 11 different countries at that particular meeting. And the Transnational Dialogues was established in 2010. So it's a group that's been meeting online and face-to-face for a bit over 10 years now. And when we met in Sweden just recently, there were some topics that came up for research. And I think the research that we were thinking about provides the evidence base for how we might move forward and what things we might, other things we might need to do in terms of policy in early childhood education for sustainability. I just wonder if any of these ideas around research might resonate with you and the sorts of things that you need to move forward. So certainly pre-service training is an area. At the moment, we don't have very much in our universities around sustainability. We certainly do in the vocational courses, in the certificate and diploma, which Fran well knows. But we don't have anything much in the university sector around sustainability training. Researchers are really interested in children's voices. There's not a lot of research around children's voices and how they can be leading sustainability, unlike some of the examples that have been shared tonight. The idea of doing research with practitioners, so an action research model, so that there's a process of facilitating change with practitioners, and practitioners are co-researchers. There's a bit of a gap with birth to 3, I think, in terms of research, and I've seen that in some of the early childhood Facebook discussions. How do you do sustainability with the birth to 3 age group? So that's an important one. And there was also some discussion around leadership. How do we engage in leadership for sustainability? And is it a distributive leadership model? Can everybody be a leader for sustainability, or do we invest in one person to be the leader for sustainability? So there's some discussion that needs to happen around that as well. But I'd be really interested in hearing your perspectives on where do you see the gaps that research might be possible to support the sorts of things that we want to do. The other thing that happened overseas was the ESERA conference, and that's the European Early Childhood Education Research Association. It gets difficult to remember the acronym. The conference was in Lisbon, and we were very pleased. You can see in the image there, that's actually at the Sustainability Special Interest Group meeting at the ESERA conference. And we had about 41 people there at that particular meeting, all interested in sustainability. And we had some discussions around the different countries represented. There are about 12 countries there that were represented. And you can see in that image, I'm holding up a piece of paper. That's a very important piece of paper. That's the position statement that this particular special interest group has written as part of their role in ESERA. And it's significant in the sense that it makes a statement about sustainability in early childhood education, and it's a statement that has been ratified by ESERA, which means that they're going to support that statement, and that statement has actually led to sustainability being a focus for the next ESERA conference, which will be in 2024. So I hope that it will provide a benchmark for other early childhood organisations and associations Every management body in Australia should have a position statement on sustainability. ECA, in my opinion, should have a position statement on sustainability. We did try to go down that track 20 years ago, but we didn't get very far. We have reconciliation action plans. Why can't we have sustainability position statements in all our major early childhood organisations and associations as well? So ICERA is really grappling with sustainability now, thanks to the work that members of the Sustainability SIG have been doing. And I'd encourage you to have a look at the Sustainability SIG Facebook site. A couple of other things, resources that are happening internationally, and I'm conscious of time here, so I'll put some links into the chat for you. OMEP, the World Organisation for Early Childhood, is actually just in the process of launching an app that has some modules in multiple languages around sustainability for early childhood educators. ECA has a new text that's coming out soon, part of their ECA Essentials curriculum series, which will provide some of the examples and that scaffolding between the policy and the practice that people have sometimes find challenging. As I mentioned before, there's a 3rd edition of Young Children and the Environment that will be coming out later this year. And this particular edition has involved over 40 chapter authors. And while it's essentially an Australian text, it does have a broader international feel to it this time, because this particular textbook that began in Australia and was originally the first 2 editions by Julie Davis from QUT, it's been translated into Chinese and into Korean, and it's being used in South Africa. So there's an international uptake of leading work that's being done in Australia. I just want to emphasise that. Another place to look for resources is the New Zealand Ministry of Education. You might be familiar with the Tufariki curriculum document, and there's a strong focus on sustainability within that document. And the New Zealand Ministry of Education has a website that provides quite a lot of resources for educators around how to engage in climate education with children. I think I might leave it there. We're running out of time, and I do want to put all those links into the chat for you. So back to you, Fran and Stephanie, to wrap things up, okay?
Thank you, Sue, and for your wealth of knowledge. I just want to explain, people have probably already followed the QR code on the screen. That takes you to the EEEC website, Environmental Education in Early Childhood website, of which I'm the current convener of, which I think I failed to mention at the start of the Learning Circle tonight. And there's a sustainability page on the website, and it will lead you to that page. And on there, is the Learning Circle that we're currently in, and tomorrow I'll put up the ability to participate in the next Learning Circle that will be on Monday, October the 9th. And the other really exciting thing that it takes you to there, which we are launching tonight, is the very first webinar in our webinar series, which is very much thanks to Sue for the webinar, which is the Climate Crisis and Children, and it's a free webinar. So if you follow the QR code, it will take you there. So touching on, resourcing people, one of the goals of the Alliance is to be developing short pre-recorded webinars of half an hour each that we can be sharing, and leaders can be sharing with educators, those that are, really keen, and maybe some of those that are needing more information as well. So we're hoping that that's a tool that people can access that can help be educating and supporting people as well. So the first one is available there, so we hope you enjoy it. And just on this last slide are the environmental sustainability networks represented in the Alliance from around Australia. So I encourage you to get in touch with your local organisation and join up as a member and try to get some connections made locally. I know, I'm just wondering if anyone wants to share. I've missed a few things in the chat just finishing up. Fran, was there something else that we need to touch on before we finished up?
Kim's asking for, if you don't have a phone with me, is there another way to find that link? Which
It's just on the EEC. I'll put the link in the chat. I'll pop it in there now.
That person doesn't have a phone though, so they can't take a photo. I think
No. I'll just put the link to the website.
Okay, fine. Good.
Yeah, I'll pop that in there now.
That's good. Okay. So hopefully this is just a small introduction into what we're planning over the next couple of years, who knows how long it will be, but anyway, over the next long time. And the information that we've gotten tonight is that everybody is perhaps on a different journey around education for sustainability and early childhood education for sustainability. So we'll just keep going and see what we get. But if you have anything that you'd like to raise with us, please contact the Alliance, any of the alliances in your state, or if not in your state, in somewhere, and then we can just pass all the information on together, and then we'll put together our next lot of webinars and our learning circles. And so we've got all sorts of different ones that'll be coming from different states. So anything else, Sue and Steph, that you want to add?
Somebody's been asking for the links that I posted, so I'm happy to share them with Stephanie, and maybe they can go out to people. I'm not sure. We'll work out something to share those links, because there are quite a lot of resources out there that people might not typically come across, I guess. Yeah.
Great. Good. Okay, Steph, so do you want to finish off, and that's it?
Okay.
Thanks everyone for coming. Yes, we'll send out a copy of this evening, and if you want to share it with your colleagues, you can, and we look forward to those that can join us next time, and the people that missed out and were upset that couldn't join us this time, well, they can join us next time as well. So thanks everybody for coming, and we hope you enjoyed it. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.